Hey guys, coming up today on the show, a really fun conversation with Joe Jones, longtime NFL linebacker. He's played in the league 7 years, kind of a special teams ace, but this has been anything but smooth when you think about his NFL career, really when you think about his football career. And I love Joe's transparency in talking about how difficult this has been, but still wanting to play. And he's currently a free agent. He's currently a guy who's waiting for another opportunity. And this is a guy who loves Jesus and is trusting in God's plan no matter what. This is also a guy who loves anime, which I don't know a lot about, but he does a podcast on anime and explains his love for anime and what it is and why he loves it. So this was a lot of fun talking to him about that as well. And he shares some great stuff, some really, really deep stuff, I think, on wanting to become a dad and the importance of becoming a father for Joe Jones. So I think you're going to love this conversation with Joe. It's coming up in just a moment here on Sports Spectrum. First, I want to remind you about our Sports Spectrum magazine, a quarterly magazine with amazing content in it. And I mean, it's faith-filled, family-friendly, clean sports content. Perfect for kids. It's really hard to find all of those things today in this culture that we live in, with Jesus at the center of it all. So I want to encourage you to subscribe to our Sports Spectrum magazine. You can go to the website, sportspectrum.com. That's where all of our content can be found. But there's a magazine icon at the top. You click that, and you can subscribe to a 1-year subscription to our Sports Spectrum magazine. And because you're listening to this podcast, we want to give you a little bonus, 15% off a 1-year subscription, simply by putting the code podcast15 when you check out. Podcast15, podcast15, when you check out and subscribe to a 1-year subscription to the Sports Spectrum magazine and save a little money here. It's already affordable, but a great way, I think, to introduce Sports Spectrum to your kids or to someone you know that loves sports and you want to introduce them to Jesus a little bit. Man, get the Sports Spectrum magazine for them. You can subscribe today over at sportspectrum.com. He is Joe Jones, NFL linebacker. What's up, Joe? Welcome to Sports Spectrum.
How you doing?
Man, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Doing real good.
Good. I love talking to you for one reason. I mean, there's a bunch of reasons. I said this before we started. You have a podcast studio with a high-level microphone and headphones. Most guests don't have that, Joe. So it's like you and me are talking, and I'm just like geeking out over your studio that you have at your house.
But it's always nice to talk to someone that has similar equipment or high quality equipment as well. It just makes the whole process so much easier and smoother.
Yes.
So yeah, I get it.
I get it. Well, we're going to
definitely get
talk about why you have that a little bit in your podcast that you do. But first, we got to start with Jesus. Tell me about
Yeah.
the Lord and Christ in the life of Joe Jones right now.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'll start with I was raised in the church. I was in the church since I can remember. My mom actually reminded me a couple weeks ago. She's like, it's crazy because I remember like you used to drag me to church as a little kid. Like I was the one making sure like, hey mom, we're going to church, right? Like we got to get ready for church kind of thing. And during the days, like I don't remember like being 5 and 6 years old. Like I don't remember those days, obviously, but she told me that, and it's crazy to hear that and just know that like he's always been a part of my life. I know that I recall that I got baptized around 8 or 9 years old. And there's been some parts of my life where I've debated getting baptized and kind of like going through that process as an adult and knowing like it's more of an intellectual decision and also emotional decision based on the life that I've lived and things that I've gone through in my life. But I mean, Jesus is is number one in my life, and I may not always act that way or show it, which many of us go through those kind of phases through our life. I'm not perfect as much as I wish I was. I'm not Jesus.
No, yeah.
But Jesus has always had a place in my life, a very high place in my life. And even if there's been times where I've kind of demoted him to number 2, he's always been there. He's always been in the back of my mind. The Holy Spirit has always definitely been there to tug on my heartstrings when I know that I'm going in the wrong direction. And he's definitely put people in my life that have helped guide me back on the right path as well. So.
Well, you have 2 Corinthians 12:9 on I think one of your last Instagram posts that I saw. The video or the scripture says, "My grace is sufficient for you,
Yes,
for my
yes,
power
yes,
is
yes,
made
yes.
perfect in weakness." What does that
Yes.
scripture mean to you when you think about this journey with Christ?
Man, a lot of weakness.
Yeah.
A lot of weak moments in my life. From high school to college to now to trying to get married to being married to having kids. Uh, it's to Life is full of weak moments for Joe Jones, and I'm sure there are others that can identify, but I would not be where I am now without the love, the grace, and the mercy of Christ. Like every day I need it. Like absolutely every day. And that's one of the things I pray for every day. I wake up, trying to be good at waking up at like 5 o'clock in the morning and starting my day off with prayer. I try to get some stuff done before my kids wake up. Sometimes I don't because they wake up at 5:15, so I got nothing done in that 15 minutes in the hour and a half I thought I had.
Yeah.
But constantly thanking him for the grace, the love, and mercy he shows me on a daily basis because I know I fall short all the time. And even when I catch myself, it's like I'm like, all right, Joe, like let's come on, we figured this out. Let's get back on track. And then sometime later, it's like, Joe, we did this already. Like, what are we doing, bro? Like,
Yeah.
whether that's in my faith walk, whether that's being a husband, whether that's being a father, a son, a big brother, like I'm nowhere near perfect. So to know that there is a God out there and who loves you and constantly gives you mercy and constantly gives you grace when you do not deserve it by like at all, it means a lot to me because I couldn't imagine life without that. Knowing that if that didn't happen, where would I be? How would life be if I didn't have that from him? So yeah.
In some ways, though, the weakness is the strength. Like that's the
Exactly.
verse, but for your life, that's being in those weak moments or those low moments or the struggle moments of life. That's kind of a superpower in some ways in your faith, right?
It no, absolutely is because then it goes to the fact that like I don't have to handle it. I know that I can't handle it, but I know that the guy that's backing me up and that has sent his son for me and gave me the superpower basically through his Holy Spirit, like I know that they got it. Like I don't have to handle it all. Now, do I need to do stuff and like make sure I'm on top of some stuff and handle business? Like, yes, absolutely. I can't just sit around and just like, all right, you got it. But also like I know that whatever weaknesses that I have, you are stronger than all of that combined. Like it does not matter where I fall short. I know that I have you to take charge and to take over in my shortcomings.
When did football become something Joe Jones was pretty good at, and you started to realize maybe I could go do this thing? You go to Northwestern, and you end up in the NFL. But even before that, when did you start to really
Yeah.
fall in love with football?
Yeah, fell in love first day, which is crazy because
Mm.
I didn't love it before day one. I had zero interest in football, and I know my mom loves it when I do this, but shout her out for forcing me. She says she doesn't force me. She says she highly encouraged me to play,
Wait, so
and
you
says
dragged her to church, and
I
she
dragged her to
dragged you to
church.
football?
Yes, exactly. It's exactly how that happened. Man, it was eighth grade, and during the summers, I normally go and visit my dad out in Georgia. And she's like, "Look, I was playing basketball and baseball at the time. We were in a new place, and she's like, "Look, I think you'd be really good at football." She enjoyed football. I think you'd be really good at football. Your size, your speed. I'm like, I ain't trying to hit nobody. I was not a physical kid at the time. I may have been a big kid, but I was not a physical kid at the time. I like the non-contact sports. And she's like, "Look, you got put on the wait list because the town that I was in was a football town. The high school had just won state, I think 2 years in a row, or that was the first year that they had just won it. And so I got put on a wait list. Basically, there's a whole bunch of kids trying to sign up for this small town. And so I'm like, all right, cool. I'm going to Georgia to go visit my dad. She's like, all right, but if they call, you're coming home. Lo and behold, all my basketball and baseball coaches like, oh, Joe wants to play football too. Yeah, come on, Joe. Like I got picked up quick, and so that started my journey. And day one, I got
Hmm.
to play running back, and it was all uphill from there. Some of my best friends have been my teammates. Um, Ended up going to play high school ball and realizing I was really good and had the chance to get a scholarship offer to a D1 school. Took my first one right away with Northwestern, didn't wait at all, fell in love with it. Didn't originally want to stay in Illinois because the Midwest is I love it because it's home, but yeah, that's about it because it's home and that's where my loved ones are.
Hmm.
So it's definitely trying to get out, but it happened to work out to where Northwestern was a great choice for me, great pick for me. I know my mom was happy. She worked actually 30 minutes down the road from campus, and we lived about an hour and a half away. And then when I realized like that I could make a living off of it, I didn't know that I could. I wasn't a star recruit really coming out of high school. I wasn't a big name guy in college. I played mostly special teams my entire career. It's like the last year and a half, 2 years of college, and started playing some defense. And just like, well, let's try it and see how it goes. And clearly, it's worked. So thank you, Mom, for my. I guess now what it'll be have close to 16, 17 years of playing football in my entire life. It's been pretty dope. So
Yeah, that's awesome. Shout out to mom. Great job, mom.
shout
Dragging
out to Mom.
dragging Joe to little Joey. I don't know if you were
Yeah,
called Joey when you were a
Joe,
kid.
just Joe.
Just Joe? Okay.
Yeah,
I
just
don't
Joe.
know. Sometimes it's Joey when you're a kid, and then you get a little older, and it's like,
Yeah,
hey, we're just Joe here.
yeah. I got some friends in college who've tried to call me Joey. I'm like Joey. There's two Joeys that I can think of. One little kid Joey and two Joey from Friends. And as much as I love Joey from Friends, I'm not Joey from Friends.
No, you're Joe Jones,
Exactly.
NFL linebacker, joining us here on Sports Spectrum. Now, there is a moment, I think, because you didn't get drafted in
No.
2017, where you're like, all right, am I even destined to play this game? That's why I
Yes.
always say if you're undrafted and you make it in the league for 3 years, you've made it, and you've made it longer than that, right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Applause for the people that have done that. It's hard to even get to the league when you're undrafted, and you were able to do it. But what moment or time frame did you realize that the NFL could be something that, like you said, make a living under and do this football thing?
Yeah. So a little bit more backstory on that time in my life. I had just gotten married in 2015, right? Summer before my fourth year in school. Been engaged for a while to my fiance now, obviously now wife. And so was married, and then 6 months later, we got pregnant with our first child. And so I have always wanted to be a dad. Like even before like talking about marriage with my wife, like I was always talking about being a dad to where that was a conversation that we had to have like, look, like yes, I understand to be dad, but obviously the duties of a husband come before being that of a father, at
Of
least at
course.
how we do things.
Yeah.
And so like that it was to that point to where we had to have a conversation about that before we even got engaged and married. And then so now I'm at this point, I'm like, okay, I'm about to be a dad. And it was a dark time for Joe Jones.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't think it was that bad, but hearing my wife talk about it during that time, it makes sense. Like I told my best friends that after I found out that my wife was pregnant, I'm like, look, I prefaced it like, look, you're probably gonna be super excited and think this is the greatest news on earth right now. I'm not there yet. And then I told them, one friend like understood, one friend was still excited. Austin Carr, I
Mm-hmm.
believe you know Austin Carr.
Know
So Austin
Austin
was still
well.
excited.
Yeah.
Austin
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, let's go." I'm like, "AC, I need you to chill for a second because I'm not there yet." But like, yes, it's great. I'm not there yet. And so that got me to the point of thinking, I'm like, okay, do I just? I'm not a big name guy. I'm definitely not getting drafted. I don't really understand the whole undrafted process and how that all works and how this thing could work out for me at all. Do I just call it quits like after college is over? Like I just get a regular job because I gotta take care of my wife and my now kid. Like I don't want to be in position to where financially specific, especially like we're not I'm not able to I guess take care of my responsibilities as a now father, and a new husband really as well.
Yeah.
Um, and so God has put two of the greatest women on earth in my life, being my wife and my mother, who pushed me and convinced me, like, look, at least try it. Because if you don't try it now, you're never ever going to be able to try it later. Like it's just not going to happen. Like especially not being a big name guy. Like it's not like you can take some time off and like, hey, I was tripping. I'm ready to play now. Like no one's like, we don't care about you. You're nobody. Um, and also my mom reminded me like there's my dad is a musician, really, really, really good guitarist. And he always obviously had dreams of being a really major guitar. And he's done a bunch of good, big gigs and stuff like that. He's played for years.
Hmm.
But there was a time where he wanted to pursue something and debated not. My mom's like, look, I don't want me and your children to be the reason that you didn't pursue something and then you have regret and holding it against us. So go do it. If it works, great. If it doesn't, at least you tried it. You knew it didn't work, and now you can now move on to what you thought you should move on to in the first place. And so that's kind of what advice my mom gave to me and my wife. Kind of similar, very similar advice. Like, don't let me and your daughter be the reason you don't try to pursue your dreams.
Hmm.
Because if you do and it works out, it's obviously going to be at the benefit of all of us. You and your happiness and enjoyment, but also like you now have a job and can take care of it, and we get to see you do what you love to do. Um, and so they are the reason that I even took that step. And I am ever so grateful for them. Obviously, 7 years later, still playing, free agent right now, still trying to make it and keep going, trying to make the 10. That's my ideal number. We'll see what happens. But
Yeah.
to the fact that I am here 7 years later is mind blowing to me.
Yeah, I'm going to go through a little bit of your career transactions in a minute, but you said
Okay.
something that I just want to kind of unpack, if you don't mind, for a second, because it's a big thing in my life too. I always wanted to be a dad, and I attribute that for me to my dad. He was in my life, but he wasn't the greatest dad. I'm not speaking for anybody else, but my own
Yeah.
situation. But that really triggered me into wanting to be a dad so bad, and I'm glad I was able to be and am able to be a dad to my daughter Sarah. Where does that come from for you? You said you always wanted to be a dad. Unpack
Yeah.
that a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some stuff to that, I guess. So my mom had me while she was in college, to my biological father, who's Joseph. And so they never got married. I forgot how old they were when I was when they technically split. They weren't really together when when I got born.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
so then that kind of happened, and then here I am. And so he did a great job of trying to taking care. From what I understand, taking care of her. He likes to cook, so he was over there making her healthy meals. Like, hey, you're growing a baby, like you need to eat. So like it started off good, and I know there were some other issues and drama that happened that as a kid I have no clue really about. But they never end up getting married. They end up not being together. And so I still had a relationship with my father. Obviously, like I said before, like I would go visit my dad in the summer, which is when I got like called, like, hey, you got to come back home to play football.
Yeah.
So summer was the time I would go visit, and hang out with him in Georgia. Um, and my mom got married to my stepdad, who I called dad. He was there when I was 4 years old. Like that's my dad. I have been blessed to have two dads. And he has done nothing but love me, cherish me, nourish me, build me up, support me. My mom for a while used to say like, you're not his kid and yet you're his favorite kid, kind of thing, like
Yeah.
kind of thing. And there was always some issues going back because obviously a kid, like I wanted to be with my dad, my biological father, and just not understanding kind of how life was going on for me. But I have nothing but the absolute most love for my stepdad Danny, but my dad, Danny, he has been an amazing father for me. And my relationship with my biological father, Joe, is not necessarily the greatest. We do talk every now and then, so it's not like he's disappeared and non-existent. We are both very similar in the fact that we are horrible communicators when I don't see you. If I don't see you
Yeah.
on a regular basis, like I'm not calling, I'm not really texting unless something's coming up or something happens. I'm like, oh, I should say something. And so like I get it from his perspective, but also for me, like I'm also the kid, the son, so I'm like expecting you to do that. So there's been some issues, and a lot of that happened once high school started, when I stopped really going to Georgia during the summer because of summer sports. Like I couldn't really go. So then we tried to make holidays work. Well, then basketball, there's the holiday tournaments and just all kinds of stuff happening. And we did still stay intact. Like I was obviously at my wedding day, was there when I graduated. We had relationships. He's seen his grandkids. So that relationship's not the best, but it's there. But I think when I be like thinking of me becoming a father and then him not all necessarily always being there, like on a day to day, 365 days out of the year, it it did something to me that I'm like, I don't want that from my life. Like obviously whatever happened with you and my mom relationship was like, I can't change that, fix that. Like, so that's kind of what led to where we are now. And I get that. But also like I that's not going to be me. Like I am going to be present, whether I am great at this or I'm the absolute worst father in the world. I am going to be there and I want to be there. And I think speaking of which, I don't know if you just heard, my kid just called me outside.
I did.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Good timing.
Yeah, great timing. but that's kind of where that came from. I've been blessed to have two dads, and I think definitely during two stages of my life, they've both been very influential men, very God-fearing men that I look up to. Like my biological father used to be in my mind like the image of what I thought a godly man should be like.
Hmm.
And so that led me in the ways of how I am now. And obviously he's not perfect. My Danny, my other dad, is not perfect as well, but both of them have been very, very godly men, influential, very godly influences in my life that have gotten me to where I am now.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. By the way, you didn't
Yeah,
have to go that deep, but I'm thankful you did,
yeah,
because I think about my story too, and I'm like, all right, my dad and I, we're still talking, and he's still alive, and we have a good relationship, but not great. It could have been
yeah,
better. There were a lot of moments in my teens and 20s and 30s where it could have been a lot better, but I don't know. I still am grateful to God that He gave me this imperfect man because it helped me. And by the way, I'm not perfect either. I haven't met anybody on this show yet who's perfect, but it helped me realize, okay, these are the things I don't want to do. And I want to be a dad to my daughter and just do some of the things that I didn't get, really just be opposite in some ways to what
yes,
I had to my daughter, really just spending time with her, supporting her, telling her I love her, being there for her, cheering her on, being her biggest cheerleader, and making sure she knows that if she needs me, I'm right
yeah,
here and I'm
yeah,
not going anywhere. And those are simple things for a lot of
yeah,
people. And I'm always envious for the people that had that when they were growing up. But I still see the blessing in, like, okay, I didn't have that growing up necessarily from my dad, but let's use that as a blessing to be able to turn around and pour that into another child. Now, how
exactly,
many kids do you have,
exactly.
Joe?
I have three,
Yeah.
and actually, we haven't like announced it to the world, but I have another one on the way due in July.
Oh, well,
So,
we just announced it. Here
uh,
we go.
yeah. So whoever sees this, you're part of the small
Congratulations.
group of people that know. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it definitely has. The relationships with both of my fathers have been motivation in different ways. Good from both, bad from both. Like again, like we said, there's no perfect man on this earth, and so I've
That's
learned
right.
from both of them, from the benefits, the good things that they did, and the bad things that they did. Again, I am blessed to have had both of them in my life. I love them both dearly. Just obviously two different men, two different lives, and
Yeah.
I've had to learn two different types of ways. So
Yeah, and your kids will say things about you that are probably
I'm
similar, right?
sure.
He's
I'm
not the
sure.
perfect daddy, but he was there and he loves
Listen,
me and I'm
I
thankful
already
for him.
know. I got plenty of things. I could make a list myself, I'm sure, without them telling me. So,
No doubt, no doubt. I'm sure my daughter could do the same thing. So,
yeah,
well, I appreciate you sharing that. I did want to go back because in 2017, as your football journey is taking place, you go undrafted, but you sign with Dallas. And I just want to read through your career transactions, at least from what I have. I probably
yeah.
missed something here,
No, you're good.
but I
Let's see.
want people to understand as we're talking to you that this isn't easy. Like, I think people don't think it's easy, but your story is really not easy
Yeah,
because this isn't just sign with a team, get drafted, and play 10 years with that team and be Pro Bowlers and Super Bowls and on the field every day. This is a grind that I'm
yeah,
about to read. I want people to hear this. So, you're signed with Dallas as a rookie free agent May 12th, 2017. You go through the whole summer. You're waived by the Cowboys September 2nd. That sounds like final cuts if I'm thinking about the
yeah,
dates
yep. It
there.
was Final Cuts. Yep.
Signed by the Chargers to their practice squad September 4th. Waived by the Chargers September 6th. Signed by the Seahawks September 19th. This is 2017, by the way, your rookie
Yes.
year.
Yes.
Signed by the Broncos to the team's active roster off the Seahawks practice squad on November 7th. And
Yes.
then we can actually go forward to 2021. So
Yeah.
just that rookie year alone is enough to say, why am I even doing this, God? What are
Man.
you doing here? And then it's happened a lot. Waived by the Buccaneers, signed to the Titans, signed to the Titans active roster after their practice squad, released by the Titans, signed back to the practice squad, activated to the practice squad, then to the active roster and back to the practice squad and signed by the Titans again because nothing is ever guaranteed, right? And then activated and played a few games last year. So this is just this crazy journey of uncertainty. I don't know. You're shaking your head even as I say this. I don't know. It just sounds like there's
It's
probably a lot of moments where you're like, "Why am I doing this again?"
yeah, man. It's it. That first year especially was crazy.
Yeah,
Um, I had a wife, had a kid at this point, and I'm like, this again, another moment. Where I'm like, do I just say forget it and find a regular job, like a regular 9 to 5 job, or start a career in something else? Um, And especially after getting cut by Dallas, because for me that year, my time in Dallas, and everyone has a different moments at different places. Some people love places, and some people in the same exact place and hated it. My rookie year in Dallas, for a majority of it, was miserable. Like it
Mm,
just was. Like
yeah.
those that training camp was just miserable.
Hmm.
I was like, if this is the NFL, I'm good. I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
And then obviously I had my two short days in LA.
Can they
um,
say you're a former Charger with two days worth
I
of being
I
there?
have no clue how that works. It wasn't like anything happened. Someone else got hurt on the active roster, so they had to bring a different practice squad guy in at that position, and I wasn't that position. So it was like, hey Joe, sorry, we kind of just it just is what it is. I'm like, you know what? It's too expensive out here anyway.
I
I don't
know.
y'all not paying me enough to bring my wife and kid out here to basically spend my entire practice squad check on rent. It kind of worked out. I'm okay.
Joe, do you even get a check for being there 2 days?
I got one check. So
Wow.
all it
Okay.
takes is one day. You get a whole week's check.
You're
So
right.
like at least I got that,
Okay. Yeah.
and didn't have to spend it on rent because I was at that point. I think we were staying with my in-laws because they had an extra. My wife's old room was still open or whatever. So,
Amazing. Yeah.
stay with them. But then I went to Seattle, and I know you talked to KJ. I was there with KJ, who I
Yeah.
absolutely love. Man, I'm so grateful I got to spend even
Yeah.
those short couple of weeks with KJ. Um, was like night and day compared to my experience in Dallas. Like I loved football again. I'm like, oh, football can be fun in the NFL. Oh, this is okay. I can do this. Let's go ahead.
Yeah.
And then yeah, it was bittersweet leaving Seattle. When Denver called me up to activate me, I thought that was going to happen in Seattle that same week because someone got hurt. That previous game, my coaches are talking like, "Hey, we're going to get you ready to go." And I'm like, "All right, sweet, like let's go." They end up activating a different guy on the practice squad, and I was a little hurt. But I was like, all right, whatever. And then a couple hours later, I'm in a meeting with Bobby and KJ on our off day, and my agent calls me like, "Hey, you're going to Denver." I was like, "This is bittersweet, but all right, let's go."
Right.
And then like yeah, like you said, like I had a couple years there, technically 3.5 years there. To the point I love Denver. Like I absolutely love Denver. Like we ended up buying a house in Denver because of the 4 years that we spent here.
Mm.
Made it home base. But then yeah, the Tampa year was probably one of the most stressful years of my life because we picked up and moved everything to Tampa. I thought it was gonna work out, thought things were gonna happen. And I ended up not making it and then getting signed to Nashville, but we were stuck in a lease in Tampa. So my wife and three kids with a newborn, wife with a newborn and two older toddlers, had to stay in Tampa while I went to Nashville by myself. And that was probably the hardest year we've had
Mm.
in our lives, in our marriages. It was just it caused a lot of issues. We've worked through some of it, not all of it. It's gonna take some time, but
Yeah.
yeah, this career has definitely taken us through a nice little roller coaster,
Well,
and
that's what I want
it's
people to understand, Joe. Like this is not just, oh, I have a job, I don't have a job, I have a job. Maybe I have a job. Oh, wait, I really do have a job.
your
Actually,
job.
I'm
Yeah,
suiting up this week.
yeah,
This is a whole thing behind the scenes with that's why I think marriages and as professional athletes can be so hard,
hard.
especially the story that you've just described and what you've been going through.
Yeah, it has not been easy. Because even then, even now, like free agency, like okay, is my time coming? Like 2022, I probably had my best season in my entire career, and then I go 2023, I don't have a job until like week 9, and I'm
Mm,
like, what? We're like, what's going on?
yeah.
I'm spending more time at home. That's an adjustment on its own. Just being home longer than I normally am used to. Didn't have OTAs, mini camp, training camp. 9 weeks into the season, I'm still home. Like,
Mm.
which my wife I'm sure is like loving because she's got more help longer than she normally has during this time. And but I'm like, I'm kind of going crazy. Like,
Yeah.
I love my kids, but I'm not used to daddy 24/7 for this amount of time. And also like the competitor in me is just not cool with sitting at home watching all my friends and former teammates playing on TV while I'm not,
Right.
especially been doing it for so long. And so this last year was a roller coaster on its own, and then getting picked up and signed and then playing and then getting hurt. And now I'm like, okay, what's what's going on? I for the first time went to like the transition breakout session at PA. I'm like, is this my time? It like is my retirement here? And I just don't know it.
Yeah.
That has been when I the most I've prayed about football has been this past year.
Mm.
Like Lord, obviously, you know my heart, and I am not done. Like you know that up here, and this body and this heart is not done with football.
Yeah.
But am I done with football? Like I need you to make it clear to me that I am done with football. Because if it's not clear to me, I'm gonna keep going for it. And he's there have been plenty of times in my life where he's made it clear to me to the point where like I necessarily didn't have like as far as me and my wife getting married, we weren't sure if we at the time that we did it that we should. There was some things that were fighting against it and like telling us that we shouldn't do it. We're too young and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, but I don't feel that way.
Mm.
And there are the instances in my life, prayers that were answered that happened. I'm like, yeah, this is what I need to do. So I know you've done it for me before. So I need, and you know, he knows me because if it's not clear to me, I'm just gonna keep going. So I don't think he would put me in this position where I was confused. I think he'll put me in a position to where you're like, Joe, like it's done, my boy. Like you gotta figure something else out and it's time to move on. So I haven't had that yet. So I'm still chugging along, trying to fight for it. But it's been a roller coaster. It's not easy. Not then there's some journeys that are, and I'm happy for those guys that get drafted and spend however many years in one spot. And I'm jealous, but also like, bro, that's amazing. Like super happy for them and their stories. That has not been my story, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. But there's still a trust there
Yeah.
too, right? Like you trust
Oh
God.
yes. Oh
And if
yes.
you put your faith and trust in him, like what does it say in Proverbs? Lean not on your own
On
understanding.
understanding. Yes.
And so there's got to be
Listen,
some kind of contentment there in the midst of what sounds like a
man.
very hectic, I don't know, uncertain, type of future of
Yeah.
wanting to play and knowing that you can still do it.
Exactly. Man, the amount of trust I have had to have in Christ and his plan for my life. Um in more than just football. Like I said, in the fact of me getting married, I have now 3 kids, about to have 4. Like there's so many things in my life from like I don't know, but I know you do and you got it. So like you've carried me this far to where times like there's no way I'm making it out of the situation, and I'm years past that, like years out of that situation. And I know it's nothing but God in my life that has brought me out of those situations and that has used those situations to help me grow as a football player, as a man, a husband, a father. Like I wouldn't be who I am today without him and the things that he's brought me through, taken me through, and allowed me to experience in my life. It's crazy.
Well, yeah, if you look back and I told you in 2017, hey, you know what you just went through? You're going to spend 7 seasons in the NFL and
I'd
be
have
able to
told
do
you
this.
you were crazy. I'm like, after that,
Exactly.
especially if that's how every year goes, yeah, I'm not doing this for 7 years. Like,
Yep.
what?
Yeah.
And to have 7 good, and they've all not been great, but all 7 good years. There's been some rough years, but they've all been good to me in one way or shape or form, whether football wise, family wise, whatever it is. Like, they've all brought something to my life that has been necessary for my growth and development and the growth and development of my family. And like I said, I couldn't have done it without him, relying on him. Even the times that I didn't rely on him, and he still had my back. Like it's just mind blowing. It's mind blowing.
Who are some of the teammates over the 7 years that you've been in the NFL that have helped you grow as a follower of Christ?
Yeah. I want to start outside of the league first,
Yeah.
because two of the biggest influences in my life have been Austin Carr, which is the person I mentioned before. So I guess I got him a little bit in the league because
Yeah.
he played still. We were never teammates, unfortunately. Tried to want that to happen, never happened.
Wide receiver in the
Um,
NFL, former
yes,
NFL receiver. Yep.
exactly. And then Matthew McCucci, by the best friend. It was like the 3 of us. We were at one point we called ourselves the sober bros. We didn't party, we didn't drink, we didn't do anything. And men of God together, that was us. But the 3 of us, he's in the Air Force now. He's an Air Force pilot.
Wow.
But those two were the biggest influence in my life in college. And I honestly, I would say I probably would not be married with kids right now if it wasn't for those 2 dudes. Like I would not, just wouldn't be.
Hmm.
They've had that much of an impact on my life. Man, Justin Simmons is one, and I know Jay's gonna if he ever hears this, is gonna be like, Joe, what are you talking about? Because I'm sure he may feel the same way about me, maybe, but I having him in my life, and seeing him being very open and vulnerable and honest with the things that he goes through in life and the struggles that he's had, um, and the authenticness he has in being who he is, and also his faith has been a light to see in my life, as especially as someone who's very successful, been successful in this league as well. He is the first person that comes to mind when you ask me that question. I mean, I've had Bradley Pinion is someone I was with him for a very short period of time in Tampa, but I feel like we connected very quickly based on faith. And the little couple Bible studies that we had, like he is a great man of God. From the short period of time I got to see him and spend time with him and talk to him, seeing him again every now and then at PAO. Those are the first two that come to mind when you ask me that question. So
No, those are all great names, people that have all been on this show, and it's just really
yeah.
cool to hear those guys mentioned. I'm sure
Yeah.
they might be humble enough to say, "Nah, I didn't do anything," but that's the beauty of being, being who they are. So
Yeah,
love that.
absolutely.
All right, I got to ask you about this podcast that you host now.
Okay.
It's with anime. If people watching this, they'd say, "Yep, it is," because you got 1,000 anime things going on behind you.
Yeah, I got a lot. This is, and what you see is probably a small. This whole room is full of it. So
Yeah, I could guess you don't let the kids in that room just for
they,
reasons,
if they do, there's a couch over here that you guys can't see. Like, sit on the couch and don't move off the
Yes,
couch.
don't touch anything.
Don't touch
All
anything.
right, so tell me, first of all, our audience, some of them might not know even what anime is. I know what it
Yeah,
is, but I don't know and understand it. What
yeah.
is it, and for our audience, and how long have you been into anime?
Um, the most basic way I can explain it is that it's basically Japanese cartoons.
Yep.
And so like that's the most basic way to explain it. There's more to it. Americans can make anime, Germans, Russians, who anyone can make anime. And the majority of the time, not always, there are anime we call anime originals, but majority of times anime come from manga, which is basically the comic book version of it. So like those books that you see behind me
Yeah.
and stuff, those are manga. And so majority of anime are animated from the original manga, but again, there are some anime originals that someone just said, I want to just make this anime, and it gets animated.
Gotcha.
And so that's the basic way that I could say it's just Japanese cartoons, but the way the biggest emphasis I think that separates anime from cartoons, at least for me, and some another anime fan might say it differently, is the stories and how they're told, the intricate stories and how they're told in anime. And not every anime has an amazing story, but the way the stories are told, how things are animated, the life lessons and morals and character development of characters and how that impacts your life as well, like what they're trying to portray, to me is different than most cartoons. There are cartoons that do it this way as well, but not all of them do. I think a majority of anime does it, and that's what has drawn me to anime for so long. And so I've been watching anime since I can remember. Like I don't remember a time where I wasn't watching anime. I may not have known it was anime because I was younger, but I've always been watching anime. I'm sure one you probably know, Dragon Ball Z.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I
So
remember.
Goku, like,
Yep.
and rest in peace, the creator of Dragon Ball Z actually just died March 1st.
Wow. Yeah.
So that was a sad moment for a lot of people, especially that's like a show that I grew up on. That again, those life lessons and like being a good friend, pushing through certain aspects, like pushing yourself past your limits, working hard even when things aren't going well. A lot of things that I took from that show specifically, and a lot of other shows. But growing up with that, both my dads have watched anime. Plenty of memories with them, my uncles, my cousins, and it wasn't always popular the way it is now. Like it's become so mainstream now. Before I used to get made fun of for watching anime.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wouldn't tell people that I watch anime,
Right.
even being like the cool athlete kid. Don't throw anime in there as well, even though it's crazy that a lot of athletes love anime. A lot of us athletes now like grew up being that closet anime fan. And there's some people that weren't, which is great. And I wish I wasn't so closet about it. But the yeah, I guess that's the best way I can kind of describe anime and how long I've been watching it.
Yeah,
So
so I'm that way with Star Wars. And Star
okay.
Wars was my thing as a kid, and I still
Yeah.
love Star Wars. I wouldn't call myself a super crazy fan, like in the
Mhm.
sense that if I could do a podcast on Star Wars right now, I probably would,
Yeah.
because I just love it. But that was my thing. I was called a geek or whatever you want to call it, a nerd.
Yeah.
growing up and even now, oh, you're a Star Wars nerd. Well, kind of, yeah,
Yeah.
we Star Wars nerd, and I just own it. So this sounds like that's what it is for you because you've gone to the level of hosting a podcast about it,
Yeah.
collecting it, showing it behind you. You could easily do stuff on football or anything else, and you've chosen anime, and
Yeah.
this has become a big deal for you. And by the way, you said it's mainstream. Forgive me for not knowing this. It's pretty big. It's huge right now, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it's ridiculous how again it's grown so much. I can't remember if it was 2020 or 2021. Just learned this stat recently, but it doesn't surprise me. One specific anime, or at the time manga, so just the comic book version of it, one show had more manga sales that year. Again, it was either 2020 or 2021 than the entire DC and Marvel universes combined.
Wow. Yeah, and that's
That's
COVID. People at
yeah,
home. It's like the new Jordan that people became fascinated with Michael Jordan because of the documentary, and they said they
yeah,
had more sales during COVID than ever.
yeah,
It sounds like
and
this
so,
is something similar.
yeah, something similar. Yeah, this show, I think a lot of people, COVID was around the time a lot more people started to get into anime. And this specific anime did bring, we call them that new generation in to anime over the past couple of years. And they got some crazy opinions, but they're new, they're babies in the community, so it's fine. We'll cut them some slack. So I'm grateful that it has become what it is now.
Yeah,
There with everything becoming bigger and bigger, there are positives and negatives to it, whatever it is.
sure.
But the more people in it, the more that I get to enjoy it
Well, I
because
got
the
to
more
ask you
money
this
going into it.
because my wife asked me this. What does your wife think of all this?
Of all the stuff behind me, that's caused some issues and some arguments. She's like, it's just stuff. Like
Yeah,
it's literally just paper and plastic. I'm like, okay, you're a big Harry Potter fan. You're a big book nerd. Like, is that just stuff? She's like, no, but actually read it. Have I actually read every single one of these books that I have behind me on the paper? No, I have read them all though. Everything that I
sure.
have
Yeah.
behind me is like from my favorite shows.
Yep.
Um, I I have the issue of being once I do something, I'm like all in. So once I decided like I want to collect a couple things because I really do enjoy this has been a passion of mine since I can remember. Like it's not just some like fleeting thing that I'm not gonna enjoy probably for the rest of my life.
Right.
Like I want to collect some things. I once I started, I kind of went crazy. Like really crazy. And a
Yeah.
very like all this most of the stuff behind me I got in less than 2 years.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I went crazy. I've stopped for now. For
Mm-hmm.
now,
Mm-hmm.
just because it's yeah, I got to ease my way back in a little bit. But my wife, is not an anime fan at all.
Yeah.
I do not have a wife that loves anime, but she even in the dating stages did indulge me watch a couple anime. It may have been on at times, and she just like wasn't paying attention. But I've also gotten some shows that she's enjoyed,
Good.
and she's actually sat down and watched with me. And like, if I were to go on without her and watch it, she would have been upset with me. So it hasn't been a lot, but it's been a couple to where she understands. I had to find those ones that match what her normal tastes are
Yeah.
outside of anime. And I think there's something for everybody. There really is.
Yes.
If you can get past it being an anime or a cartoon, I think if you are there to just kind of indulge yourself for a second, just like, all right, let me be open to it. The stories that are told, the characters and the character development, there's something for literally everybody. Whether you like romance, you like action, you like fighting, you like suspense and thriller, you like just like a chill slice of life comedy kind of show, like there is literally something for everybody.
Okay. All right. Well,
So
that's a sell right there for
yeah, it
anime.
is.
I will say
And it
this: my wife doesn't like Star Wars. I love the Beatles. I'm really fascinated by the Beatles. She doesn't care about them. She
yeah.
likes sports, but she doesn't love it like I do. So they're just supportive, and I
They,
support her and
yes.
she supports me. Right? That's how
Yes.
you are.
Yeah, exactly. My wife has been very supportive of the podcast. It's been rough because especially like we kind of talked about it before. I do pretty much most of the editing for my podcast. I do have a co-host, but I pretty much do most of the editing, so that takes a lot of time away from everything else that I could be doing.
Oh yeah.
And so we've had to kind of find a balance and a schedule, and she's been extremely supportive because this is something that I wanted to start like 5 or 6 years ago, and I've only been doing it for a year now.
Good for you, though. Good for you that you
So
started it. Well, it's like faith, Jesus, family, football / anime, and everybody
yeah, I was
else,
gonna say
right?
yeah. Slash anime is probably the proper way to put that.
It's good, man. Well, listen, this has been a great conversation. I want to close it with this. And I saw a sweatshirt that you were wearing on Instagram recently. It said, "Heaven is my home. I'm just here recruiting." And it's
Yes.
one of my favorite sweatshirts when I saw it. And I'm like, I love that because that's in essence what we've been called to do with the Great Commission to make disciples. What kind of reaction do you get from people when they see
Bro,
that sweatshirt? What kind of
it's
conversations?
it's amazing how many people are like, I love your sweatshirts.
Yeah,
And so I actually just went, I wore it, what's today? Today's Wednesday? I wore it Sunday.
yeah,
Wore it Sunday to a family friend's kid's birthday party. And so I was wearing it around. We were at this little like Chuck E. Cheese, this kind of place.
yeah.
And I had like 10 people come and tell me how much they loved my hoodie. And I was like, that's what this is for. And I'm so glad that it has had the effect that I wanted it to. I put it on not thinking about it because it's just one of my favorite hoodies. It's a very comfy hoodie, like the color, whatever it is. But then for it to have an effect or impact on someone is always amazing. The two things that you will find in my closet, literally like I'll say three things that you'll find in my closet. About 45% of it is either anime merch or faith merch.
Mm.
The other 10% is my athletic wear that I got to train in and whatever stuff I got from whatever teams I'm on. But a majority of my clothes is anime and faith merch. And so I love going through the airport and having someone stop me and say, your shirt is amazing. Or I've gone to Starbucks and someone read the message on the front of my shirt and is like, I needed that today. Like I've had that multiple times.
That's great.
Had a woman almost cry, and I'm like, please don't cry. Like I don't know how to handle that, but I'm so glad that this has touched you to that extent. It always makes my day when that stuff like happens.
No, and it's a message, man. I mean, it's
Yeah.
there's so many different ways that we can quote unquote share the gospel with people. And if you're wearing a sweatshirt like that, and then you're obviously, treating someone with kindness and love and compassion, that might be the best witness for Christ that you
Yes.
could be, instead of
Abs-
preaching at him or screaming at him.
Absolutely.
So
I've found that to be the biggest way I've had an impact. I'm not a perfect guy, like I said before, and I'm not always the nicest, depending on what mood I'm in. But I feel like the way I was raised is always to treat people with love and respect. Treat people the way you want to be treated.
yeah.
I like to go above and beyond and be nice to people, especially if I notice someone's having a bad day. Like
Hmm.
the waiter at my table is not necessarily doing the greatest job, but I notice he's pretty cranky, and there's a lot of people in here, so something's going on, right? Like so treat them with some love and respect. And I think honestly that has been the biggest impact I feel like I've had as far as that goes, the Great Commission goes, is wearing the merch that I've had and people seeing that message, and hopefully make an impact in the day and the way that you just treat people. I like you're not gonna be able to spend hours and hours and days with people to actually have that greatest of an impact on them. But even the tiny moments like that, to where you just say hi to someone, ask them how they're doing, or just like, I hope you have a great rest of your day when you leave the coffee shop. Like I feel like that's been the biggest impact that I've been able to have on people's lives.
Totally. He is Joe Jones. This has been a fun conversation, my
This has
friend.
been great.
I
This has
love
been
it.
awesome.
Thanks for coming on. It's been long overdue. Glad we were able to get it done, and look forward to seeing you hopefully soon and talking to you again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks again for having me. Really appreciate it.
And many thanks to Joe Jones for being our guest today on Sports Spectrum. He was a lot of fun, a fantastic guy, a dad of three, soon to be four, a host of a anime podcast, and a guy who wants to continue playing in the NFL and try to make it 10 years. He's got 7 under his belt, mostly with the Titans and the Broncos. He wants to make it to 10. We'll pray with him and believe with him that God has a plan for his life. And if he takes him to 10, great. Sounds like Joe is content, though, if it's just 7, or maybe it's 8 or 9. Whatever that is, God's plan is perfect, and Joe is trusting in that. And I commend him for sharing what he shared here today on Sports Spectrum. And we wish him nothing but the best. Make sure you follow him on Instagram and let him know that you heard his story here on Sports Spectrum. You might have come across a lot of anime when you follow him on Instagram as well, but the man is a fun follow and he's a great guy. And say hello to him from our Sports Spectrum family on Instagram. And we appreciate you for listening and tuning into today's show. You can find us at our website, sportspectrum.com, where all of our content is found. And very soon, within a couple months, we have a Sports Spectrum app coming your way as well. So lots of exciting things happening with our Sports Spectrum media ministry. But check out the website every day because you got devotionals there, you got updated stories and articles, you have all of our podcasts, video content, great resources, all for free over at sportspectrum.com. And if you're listening to this podcast on Apple or Spotify or wherever it might be, Amazon, iHeart, make sure you click follow or subscribe on whatever that app has so you can stay in touch with all that we're doing here at Sports Spectrum and not miss any more conversations like today's with Joe Jones. These conversations are faith-filled, sports-centered content, and that's what I love about what we get to do at Sports Spectrum. We'll talk to people about sports, but we're also going to ask them about Jesus as well. So we love you guys. We thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time with a brand new conversation here on Sports Spectrum's podcast. My name is Jason Romano, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Hey, thanks for watching Sports Spectrum here on YouTube. You can click our next video, or you can check out our website, sportspectrum.com.